Love it or loathe it, Barbie is an undeniable box office behemoth. Hollywood's spin on the world's most famous plastic doll banked $377 million on its opening weekend alone, a box office record for a film directed by a woman or a person identifying as a woman. And the biggest weekend for movie theatres since pre-pandemic. But it's fair to say not everybody is enjoying it.
The premise of the film, politically speaking, is that men and women are on two sides of the divide and they hate each other.
All men in the film are either bigots or idiots.
Now, is Barbie a smash the patriarchy feminist film? Yes, it is.
The real world and all the men in it are shown to be universally, irredeemably horrible.
Well, prominent US conservatives are now calling for a Barbie boycott. Barbies are being set ablaze in the streets. Senator Ted Cruz, a former presidential candidate, says it's brainwashing Chinese communist propaganda. That's got something to do with flags, I think. As always, I personally feel a measure of dignified perspective and restraint is required at moments like this. But also, as always, I hate to say, I told you so. There are a number of Barbie characters in the movie. Right, one plays President Barbie, one plays Dr. Barbie, one plays a Barbie with a Nobel Prize in physics, one is a mermaid Barbie. However, all the male characters in Barbie world are simply called Ken. So it's pretty clear where this movie is going. This is an assault on not just Ken, but all men. Well, I wasn't wrong, was I? And it's even worse than I feared. The core focus of Barbie is, oh God, the patriarchy. The word is used endlessly in the movie, even though most people, including me actually, have no real idea what patriarchy really means. I guess it means all men are evil till they can prove otherwise. Women are their oppressed victims. Anyone who disagrees is obviously a misogynist. Barbie's message is that the only solution to all this dreadful patriarchal state of affairs is obviously for women to rule the world, and preferably do so on their own without horrible men to ruin it, or ruin them and their lives. So they want to do it on their own. There's a slight genetic problem with that, though. What happens in like 100 years? It's all over. If there is a plot, it boils down to something like this. Barbie lives in Barbie world with many other virtue-signaling Barbies, including a transgender Barbie, a disabled Barbie, and a black female president Barbie. These Barbies are all powerful, while the Kens, obviously, are all second-class, useless half-wits. Then Barbie and Ken are transported to the real world where, wait for it, men are in charge of everything and are largely despicable. Barbie is immediately objectified. One ghastly man shouts, "Give us a smile, Blondie," which is a phrase that hasn't actually been used in the real world since probably the Second World War. Mattel, the owner of Barbie, is represented as a macho, misogynist outfit with an all-male board of alpha dogs. The unfortunate reality is that Barbie was invented by a woman called Ruth Handler, who ran the company for 30 years as president. And to this day, Mattel has 5 women on its 12-person board. Now, without spoiling all of the movie, or the stunning conclusion, he does all that for itself, of course. Ken returns to Barbie world filled with patriarchal malice, prompting a battle of the sexes in which all of the empowered Barbies have to unite to defeat the evil idiot Kens. My question about all this is why? Can't we just get along? I thought feminism was about equality. Why does empowering women always have to be about trashing men? The real world I live in is full of confident, high-achieving women who probably will laugh at such a derisory misrepresentation of their supposed lowly status in life compared to men. And if anybody made a movie which depicts women as Barbie depicts men, well, they wouldn't just be cancelled. They'd be tarred and feathered and marched through the streets. Well, to debate the Barbie backlash is Nomica Cox, the director of Matriarch. And here in the studio, lifelong Barbie fan Esther Cracker, who I have to say looks absolutely fantastic. That's a look you should keep. I mean, we can all agree on this. Also joined by socialist and author, we can be a socialist author, actually, Grace Blakely, who came as Barbie last week, to be fair, but has not got the memo today. Plus, appropriately stuck in the middle of his strong female panel is Chris Taylor, who plays one of the Kens in the actual movie, which is now one of the biggest movies of all time, and he was in Love Island. So I may have to finally concede that somebody connected with Love Island has actually done something with themselves, which is an incredible moment of realisation and self-awareness. Well, thanks for joining me, everybody. Before we get down to some serious Barbie-related debate, I want us all to feel comfortable.
Come on, Piersy, let's go party.
There we go. We're now in Barbie world. OK, where do we start here? Let's start with you, Esther, because you look fantastic and you saw the movie today. I've written a column for the Sun and the New York Post, actually, same column. Just because I feel, when I hear the word patriarchy, as often as it's said in this movie, immediately I'm like, here we go again. Here we go again. This sort of construct that, despite everything that's happened in the last 50 years, all men are awful till they prove otherwise. All women are downtrodden, oppressed. And if only it wasn't for ghastly men, they'd be ruling the world. You know, Lily Allen said she went to see Barbie and Oppenheimer, and the clear conclusion was if women were in charge, none of that would have happened, right? I mean, it is exhausting to me.
I mean, I suspected this would happen when we started having a conversation about whether Barbie's a feminist icon. And I just thought to myself, why does Barbie need to be a feminist icon? Anyone who's grown up with Barbies knows that she's just a doll that girls like to play with. And then 10 seconds into the film, I'm just being shoehorned with this ideology, this, patriarchy this and feminism that, and I'm just thinking it's a giant catfish of a film. It's like going on a date wanting to see J-Lo and then, I don't know, at the end you see someone like Lizzo, for instance. It's completely unnecessary. Why can't we just have a film about dolls? The people that made this film have never seen any of the other Barbie animated films because it's completely unrelated. It's a giant catfish. And I just think...
And all the Kens, and no offence, Chris, we're going to come to you in a moment, all the Kens
are dumb.
They're such dumb dweebs. I mean, it's like they've come off the set of Love Island or something.
But this is the problem. They're so incompetent. And it's like, and at the end of the film, they try and say, oh, but we're all humans and we're all equal. Okay, but you've painted half of humanity as incompetent half-wits. So exactly how does that work?
Monica, you represent the matriarchy, which is another awful-sounding word. It seems to me what the movie really wants to do is just replace the patriarchy with the matriarchy. In other words, go from one thing which every woman apparently believes is the problem with the world and flip it round so that the people who suffer the problem and the oppression and are made to look like downtrodden imbeciles are men, not women. I don't really get that. Why is it so awful, this atriarchy syndrome? Why replace the P with an M?
Well, we're like in late stage capitalism. The world's on fire right now. Women are losing their fundamental rights, at least in my country, left and right. We still don't make equal pay on the dollar. We're doing emotional labor. We're doing physical labor. As the beautiful America Ferrera just said in she had a moment in her long speech. That is why we want to replace the patriarchy, which is very top down, into a more communal, democratic way of living, which is the matriarchy. And back when we had matriarchies, it was more democratic. Crete, the famous island of Crete, had a matriarchy where they didn't go to war, and then everything was communal. So I don't really see a downside of this. I mean, right now.
So you think, just to be clear, you think if women ran the world, there'd be no warfare?
I think that we have different ways of dealing with conflict than men do. And if it was a majority female-led environment, we would not be in a lot of these circumstances.
Really?
I mean,
you think women never engage in conflict? Is that a joke?
I say we engage in conflict. I think we engage in conflict. We're humans, but we don't engage in conflict the same way. And I think this was satire. It was art. I'm sorry if some people wanted it to be a kids' movie, but the best art, whether it's The Wizard of Oz or Barbie, is really a reflection of the times, is a reflection of the struggles. And frankly, I don't know, you said that you've never seen a movie like this. When I saw that Marilyn Monroe movie, who was a complicated, beautiful artist, genius, they made her out to be it was despicable. It was an assault on women. So how about most movies out there do make women feel uncomfortable? And my God, it's art. Have a sense of humor. There was satire. It was attacks on capitalism, climate change, warfare. It was fun. It was layered.
Right.
It was complicated, like women.
Before I bring in Ken, let me just bring in Grace. I know you're not into the whole Barbie thing particularly, but patriarchy you're definitely into, right?
Yeah.
You do
I'm
think...
so into it. I'm so into patriarchy.
Hello, but are you? I mean, does the patriarchy really exist?
An obvious end point of the very successful attempt that we've had within most capitalist societies for liberal elites to basically take over and commodify the feminist critique, which was a critique of capitalism. This is a massive box office, hitting movie made by a huge multinational corporation that's going to make loads and loads of money, that also uses exploitative labor practices all around the world. The problem is, it's not like there was Ariana Huffington famously said the financial crisis wouldn't have happened if it had been Lehman Sisters instead of Lehman Brothers. That's obviously completely wrong. I personally don't even buy the idea that there are these huge insurmountable differences between men and women. The problem is capitalism. That's why we have gender inequality. That's why we have racial inequality. That's why we have all these different forms of inequality. And unless we get that fixed by taking down big corporations like Mattel, everything's going to stay the same.
That's fine. I have no problem with you believing that. That's fine.
I'm glad you have no problem with me believing that. I'm glad we agree that I have the right to believe what I believe.
Can we just leave Barbie out of it? I don't mind them making this trash heap of a film.
Quite hard to leave Barbie out of it when you're literally dressed like Barbie.
Yes, but let's rename the film to some pink feminist-like child film. Let's do that, because this Barbie film is not Barbie related at all. Anyone who's seen any of the Barbie films, any of the animated series, who's grown up with it, this is not Barbie related at all. Ken is not, a half-wit. Barbie is not ideologically incoherent in the way that she is in the film. Let's just separate the two.
Well, let's bring in the smirking.
Yeah, shall I weigh in on that?
All right, Chris. Hey, first of all,
Piers, you've been really mean so far.
No,
You made a Love Island slur.
I'm only.
I thought this
I'm
was
Yankee-
assault on men.
I'm Yankee as shade. I have a historic thing about Love Island, which I'm sure is very aware of. Let's put that to one side. Look, it's incredible you're in this movie.
Thanks.
Which is now one of the biggest grossing films in history. First of all, how does that feel?
Yeah, pretty good, yeah.
I mean,
Pretty
you're on
great,
Love Island, and now you're in the biggest movie in the world.
Yeah, it's fairly
Not a normal
overwhelming.
progression for Love Island.
No, not really. Yeah, it's pretty mind-blowing.
And the story about how you got this is equally mind-blowing. You
Yeah.
go to some premiere of a movie, and you end up, or you're not there, and your mates are, you end up going to Margot Robbie's after party.
Yeah.
And she turns out to be a massive Love Island fan,
Yeah.
including you.
Yeah.
She knows who you are.
Yeah. And then I started talking about male genitalia, and the rest is history.
Was this true?
Yeah, no, I didn't make that up.
You
that's
talked
true.
about someone you knew with a micro penis.
A friend of mine, he has a micro penis, yeah.
As in, how big?
I've not got a ruler out next to it, Piers. Like, I don't know
You
exactly.
were telling Margot Robbie.
It's small.
Tiny.
It's I'd say inch.
And then you have a mate
from
with very large testicles, is that right?
My dad's best mate has very big bollocks, and he can carry
And
12
this is
bottles
how
of beer
you
on it.
managed to get inside Margot Robbie's head to end up playing Ken. It's a
Maybe,
true story.
I don't know. That is what happened, but I will say I panicked. I panicked, and I just said whatever came to my head. And it was relevant. Like, people were talking about penises, but we're not here to debate this. This is
I actually find that the most...
so intrigued about
I found the most riveting thing
This
of all.
sounds like one of those stories where it's like, oh yeah, my friend needs advice about something.
Yeah. And this is how you basically wooed Margot
Talking
Robbie
about
to get you
myself.
in the movie, right? Next thing, 18 months later, you're in Barbie.
I'm in Barbie, yeah.
All because of that conversation.
All because of micro penises and big balls, yeah.
Now, you get there, you're one of myriad Kens. My impression of them is they're basically depicted as a bunch of losers. And that if I made a movie flipping this round and depicted women the way that this movie generally depicts men, all hell would break loose. Do you accept that?
I accept that, but I feel like you're missing the point. So I think everyone's missing the point a little bit. Like, so it's a comedy, right? And we're in very dangerous territory when we start picking out comedy and saying, oh, you can't say that, because then we're going to live in a world where comedy
I'm not saying they
don't
can't say
exist.
it, but there's a distinct political and social point they're making about the patriarchy, which is rammed home again and again
I get that.
and again.
What I'm getting to is the overarching comedy, the overarching joke of the entire film is you're looking at Barbie, which is played with by children, mostly girls, and this is how they play with Barbies and Kens. Barbie is the primary character, and Ken is the secondary character that comes in and out a little bit and is widely disregarded because the girls see themselves in the Barbie and not so much the Ken.
But this idea,
and that's just an
hang on,
interaction
look,
thing.
Chris, my problem with it is this idea that you go into the real world from Barbie land, where all the women are in charge, and the real world, suddenly you're confronted with this vile place run completely by men, and they're all awful, even down to the depiction of the company that makes the Barbie dolls, which is so different to the reality of that company. Female president for 30 years, half the board now are women. It's not run by a bunch of madmen executives, as this film wants you to believe. There is no overt sexism from the company because it was basically run by women.
I don't think Mattel would want people to believe that. I think what you're missing is the fact that it's a joke. And a lot
He's got you there.
But we're the butt of the joke.
No, because listen, right?
Who cares?
Listen, comedy.
Exactly. No,
Grow up.
I totally
Stop being
agree.
such a snowflake.
I totally agree.
It's a free
And yet-
market capitalist society. The film made money. What's wrong with
Miss
that?
Blakely, I totally agree with you. My point is, if I made the movie and flipped it and was mocking women like this, you would be leading the charge. I'd be hung, drawn and quartered, probably executed. It's the hypocrisy at the heart
Let's
of
stop
And then
making
you would
comedies
say,
then. Let's
oh,
never
they're
make
all-
comedies anymore.
No.
And then you would say-
Stop
You can
doing
make them. The
jokes.
way you're making a very deliberate point, promoting feminism and using patriarchy as a stick to beat all men till they can prove otherwise, I have a problem
And then
with
if
it.
women come on your show and say, oh, I've got a problem with this, you say, oh, shut up, snowflake.
Hold on,
Like, that
hold
is the whole debate that we've had in recent years. It's like, you can't say anything about anything because you're a snowflake. Men are being snowflakes about Barbie. I don't even like the film.
No, you're missing my point. You're totally entitled.
I haven't seen it, I'm sorry.
I think you're
Go
missing
and
the
watch
point.
it.
I'm
Okay.
not asking for Barbie to be cancelled. Obviously, everyone's enjoying it.
No, you're asking for
my
film to be
wife and
cancelled.
daughter went to see it in LA a couple of days ago. They loved it, right? Fine. My problem is with the argument it promotes. I'm allowed to criticise that. That's called free speech, right? I'm not trying to silence.
And I'm allowed to call
Barbie.
you a snowflake for criticising.
Yes, you are, but you're missing the point about why I'm criticising it. I'm criticising the hypocrisy. If you flipped it around, Esther, if I made a movie which lampooned women like this from a very male-dominated position, all hell would break
The thing
loose.
is, it is hypocrisy. I take offense with the fact that you think this is a comedy. It wasn't funny at all. And also, there is something like this that actually mocks women. It's called a Dave Chappelle special. And every time he comes out with a new special, we need to cancel him because he's punching down on the poor women. The reality is, this film is a giant catfish, and you use the Barbie name to try and shoehorn these ideologies into a kids' film. And you can call it a comedy if that's your standard of entertainment. That's fine. And I don't really have a high standard of entertainment. I watch Love Island. I watch Fast and Furious.
And also,
But
how are they
Barbie
selling?
itself-
How are they selling this? Let me go to Namiki for this. How are they selling this feminist utopia? I'll tell you how they're selling it. They're selling it by choosing the hottest woman in Hollywood, Margot Robbie. Everyone thinks that, male and female. And she produces it, I think. Right?
Yeah, her production
So she's making tens, probably hundreds of millions of dollars as the hottest woman in Hollywood in every sense from a movie which makes out all women are oppressed by the patriarchy. Forgive me if I laugh. She's the walking, breathing embodiment of someone who's making the patriarchy look like a bunch of losers, isn't she?
No, I don't agree with that at all. And I think historically, there are a lot of women who had to use whatever tools were available to them. She is beautiful. She's also a brilliant actor. She's also extremely intelligent.
Yeah.
She's also well-spoken, as are all of the women and men, by the way, in that film. Ryan Gosling is not getting, the attack the way she is. But furthermore, that's capitalism. And until capitalism failed, which I think is the patriarchy, by the way, I think the patriarchy is capitalism. Until it fails, people are going to do whatever they can to survive. I mean, that is
At what point would you have to accept, on behalf of the matriarchy, that the patriarchy doesn't really exist anymore, and that basically most women I know are running rings around blokes? At what point do you admit that?
I think you're literally in a bubble, and do not open the newspaper, because the way that women are under attack in the United States right now is jaw-dropping. I mean, with the ban on abortion, the ban on women's health clinics, women being targeted, rise in domestic violence, not to mention that our pay has not moved in ages. There's a declination in women in leadership, even though we think we should be at some sort of a parity at this point. It's the way that women in the press and in the public are attacked by online campaigns, by corporations, by the right wing.
You don't think men are?
By you?
Have you spent even a minute in my Twitter feed? Trust me, this idea only women get trolled on Twitter.
But no,
it's
this is
ridiculous.
Absolutely
ridiculous. Great.
It's important because actually this is the problem when we get the commodification of feminism, is that we get this idea that feminism means like every, CEO of every corporation being a woman or having 50% of women on boards. That's not the lived experience of the vast majority of women alive. The vast majority of women actually live in, either in very poor countries where they're denied an education, or they live, in situations where they experience domestic violence. Here in the UK, 1 in 3 women will experience sexual assault at some point in their lives. That's what life is like for most working class women. And you can't get rid of that by just saying, oh, we're going to make a couple of, prime ministers or CEOs women. That's the problem with liberal.
And you don't think young men ever get assaulted?
I mean, I do, but they don't get assaulted to the extent that women do.
That's not the point you're making.
You don't think who gets stabbed in the streets? It's very rarely women. It's young men by men, right?
I think we can agree.
So there are
that
different forms.
Violence is a problem, but it's not.
There are lots of male victims of violence.
Right? I think
we didn't say sexual violence.
Yes, I did. I said sexual violence, right? Which is a deep problem in our society.
Yeah.
Is actually, if you look at it within and outside the home, more common than what you're talking about, kind of gang violence on the streets, and it happens to women so much. And when it's part of a bigger narrative about racism, then it's fine to talk about violence against women. But we're actually talking about how we tackle violence against women, unless it's a part of this wider agenda, cultural agenda. Okay. Nobody cares, and that's a problem.
Well, I care. Ken, last word to you. You're Ken to me.
Right. I wait with a bated breath.
What, last word from me?
Your last word.
I think
as the resident king.
I think everyone's just missing the point.
Oh,
that it's a joke. Greta Gerwig has done a good job of navigating a potentially massive minefield. You're right. If it flipped, it would be a different story. But
Right.
ultimately,
That's my
I'll
point.
admit that, right? But
Thank you,
we're
Chris.
talking about a doll that was made in 1959
Listen,
to empower
it took
women.
you 18 minutes,
And that-
but you got to a place of saying,
That's
Piers,
beside the point.
I agree with you.
It's the
That's
free
beside
market.
the point.
By the way, I want to
made
end,
loads of
I want to
money.
end on that.
About women empowerment. That's
There
what
was
I've got to
only
say.
one. Of
Power
course
to
it
women.
is. Yeah, all right, enough virtue signaling, mate. You've ticked all the boxes. I'm going to end by giving women what they really want from their king. It's this.
Let's go party.
That is terrifying.
That's a proper Kim. There's another one here.
Look like
You've
that.
There
had
we
that.
go.
That's heavily photoshopped.
It's not at all.
I have no words.
This is the whole. I've got a whole raft of
I
Kim
have
pictures
nothing
here.
to say.
That is terrifying.
Esther's,
That's actually
Esther's
really disturbing.
gobsmacked. She's
I'm
been silenced by
I'm
the glory.
speechless.
Thank you. Let's leave it on that. Rendered silent by the glory of my kingdom. Thank you, Chris. Congratulations, mate. Margot Robbie's one of my favourite. Probably is my favourite actress. I met her at an Oscars party. She was fabulous.
Did she tell you about how she likes Union?
No, we talked about cricket.
Big fan of Union.
We talked about cricket. She's an Australian, unfortunately, and I obviously right now, it's the last thing I want to talk about is cricket. But at the time, there was no Ashes series. We had a great conversation. Lovely woman, very talented. Couldn't be happy that a woman is making hundreds of millions of dollars out of her looks and her talent in the patriarchy. What a miracle. How's she doing it? It's really, it's
like it doesn't
incredible.
exist.
That
Oh.
some woman is able to do that and break through this towering sexist mayhem which inhibits all women I know, including these two downtrodden, oppressed female creatures in front of me, who I know just never feel they can even speak unless I let them. Right, ladies?
Of course.
So true.
Chris, great to see you. And congratulations, seriously.
Cheers.
From Love Island to the world's biggest movie, that is a trajectory I never
Ken.
thought I'd ever witness. So you
Can't slate us anymore.
I can't slate you anymore. I can't slate,
over.
I can't
The
slate
reign's
you
over.
anymore.
An Oscar-worthy meteoric rise.
It's amazing. And I genuinely, kudos.
Thank you.